Hey everyone, it's Gary here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is a good one, so grab a snack, relax, and take a listen to this. In today's story, Opie found out his wife cheated on him with a famous Olympian athlete 4 days after their 10-year anniversary. Now his wife is begging for mercy and claims she is very remorseful. Now, let's get into today's story to find out what happened. My wife and I have endured a lot over the course of our marriage, most of which are things that were beyond our control. I have a successful career, but our earnings were taken from us by thieves twice in 5 years, and I have an immune disorder that gets me sick at the drop of a hat. So, of course, when COVID came around, I almost died from it and spent over a year recovering from very bad symptoms that kept me in bed most days. Luckily, my career allowed me to work remotely from my bed, but I can't say I did my job well as COVID brain fog is a thing. Fast forward to April 2021. Ailment, brain fog, and financial difficulties all culminated in me recognizing I reached the point of emotional hopelessness. While not suicidal, I knew I needed professional help in a major way, so I voluntarily checked myself into a behavioral hospital for a few days. While the hospital itself was only marginally helpful, one therapist helped me to realize that my long-term ailments made me unintentionally selfish due to prolonged depression. I ugly cried when I had this epiphany as I realized what harm I brought to my wife's emotional well-being and to our marriage in general. I was a new man almost overnight in some respects. I was still quite emotionally fragile and recognized I had a long way to go to repair myself and regain my wife's confidence in me. I emerged from the hospital and my wife picked me up. She immediately noticed the 180 and said, "Wow, I have my husband back." I told her my COVID symptoms continued to abate, and even my libido and desire for emotional and physical intimacy for her was also returning and looked forward to embracing us fully, and my wife was incredibly happy for me. Unfortunately, fate stepped in 4 days later as she sat at a cafe outdoors. A younger, fit, healthy, and charming athlete decided to strike up a conversation with her. My wife is, in a word, hot. I mean, I know I show bias because she's my wife, but she looks amazing. She is tall and very well proportioned, and her face is beautiful. The gentleman in question was a foreigner and a charmer. He was a bona fide sponsored professional in his sport and well known in his country. He visited our city to train for a few weeks. When she came home, she could not shut up about the guy, but I thought nothing of it. Crushes happen, and I am not the jealous type. The day after was the beginning of the bad times ahead. She didn't tell me they exchanged contact information and they met up. She came home from her daily dog walk, beaming. I knew immediately she met him. She tried to deny it, but she knows I am very astute when it comes to reading people in general. She pretty much told me that she was going to have this non-emotional, purely physical thing and said sex would not likely happen. As I was 5 days out of the mental hospital, I was in no position to fight her on this, either mentally or physically. As with the latter, I was still weak from fighting 14 months of COVID, even though the vaccine continued to allow me to improve steadily every day. With the lack of intimacy on my end due to being sick for so long and considering he was only in town for another week before he returned to his home country, she was absolutely determined to have this affair. Because I lacked the means to fight her effectively, she viewed it as approval from me, which it was not. I essentially told her that she should let me track her phone at all times for her safety. She would let me know if they were intimate. She promised, but she lied on both counts, of course. Furthermore, she told me that while he was in town, I could not hug her, touch her, kiss her, or make any intimate overtures towards her. I told her that I was afraid she was lying to me and that she was falling for him. I asked her to promise me I was not losing her. Remember, I was fresh out of a mental hospital due to hopelessness, and she said she could not promise that to me. She took him to our favorite restaurant, a very romantic place. They made love in a park that night, even though she told me they had only kissed. The next morning, she grew livid when I asked her again how far they went. Adults don't go into a closed park at night to kiss, and insisted I was being paranoid. She checked herself into the swankiest hotel in our city because she needed time to herself and tried to convince me that she was not doing so in order to see him. She stayed for 2 nights. At the end of the second night, he showed up. She had the nerve to text me that he came to the hotel and that they had mediocre sex. Then he left. She met him one final time the next morning at a cafe, as he was leaving the next day. She decided to go all out and proclaim she had fallen for him. Here's where it gets funny and sad. The man was a player in every sense of the word. He was shagging multiple women while in town, trying to juggle them all, including my wife. At no time did he reciprocate any words of affection or emotional attraction to my spouse. He was a 100% pure alpha male player, treated her horribly, spent most of their time together talking about himself, his training, and even that he went to a strip joint with members of a professional NFL team, which pissed her off, but also made him even more attractive to her, of course. So she came home, fully expecting me to light her up, and I did. She said she did it. It's over. She had no emotional feelings for him and said it was my decision as to whether or not I wanted to stay with her afterwards. She said she did it as a means to regain her self-confidence, something I tried to do for years before I got sick to no avail. I'm a pretty smart cookie and really good from a technical perspective. I knew from the outset she would lie, omit, and follow the cheating wife's playbook, and did it to the letter, including gaslighting me on a number of occasions. Let's say that I had the means to listen in on their conversations in real time and recorded it. She knew I had the capability, but she chose to blatantly disregard it and pressed on with the affair. Of course, she even offered to let me go and screw someone to make me feel better, if that's what I wanted to do. So stupid. So typical of a response. Every lie she told, I called her out on. I presented the evidence. She was devastated when she knew she was fully caught. I had just about everything. Of course, she tried the I can't remember crap. She tried to downplay their sexual encounters. I knew about both. I knew she told him she fell for him, as again, I was able to listen in real time and record the same. I gave her the transcripts. So where are we now? Now she is aware of how much she hurt me. She's doing everything and anything to make it right, but there is nothing she can do to regain my trust, and she knows that as well. She says she is willing to take my anger and my indifference for the rest of our lives, if it means that I may see through her actions that she is more than sorry for what she did to me. I think she is truly remorseful. She admits that if he stayed in town longer, she would have continued to see him, knowing full well that it would have completely ruined any chance we had to reconcile. She's blocked him. I have access to all of her devices. I know where she goes at all times. She says she will let me do this until the end of time. What she doesn't understand is that she has forever changed me. I was never a jealous man. I am not an alpha. I never tried to be, but I am confident in who I am as a man, and I've never had problems with the ladies. I've had 100 opportunities to stray due to women's advances towards me, and I never considered infidelity. The first time it happens to her, she was a bit heavy prior to how she looks now. She lets herself get shagged, and all because he was so good-looking and fit and confident. He played her like a fiddle. Why am I not filing for divorce immediately? Because prior to her idiotic endeavor into wayward wifeville, she bent over backwards when I had COVID for 14 months. She kept me on this planet. To say what she did was over and above to keep me on Earth would be an understatement. I know she loves me. I know why she betrayed me. She tried to blame it on stress and lack of confidence, but in truth, it was simply because a guy like that, for the first time in her life, wanted to screw her. And he said all the right things about her looks. He got her to say sexual things she would never otherwise say. She has admitted to everyone, from her friends to her parents, what she did, and that she will spend the rest of her life trying to make it up to me. And she knows I don't trust her and may still decide to leave her. Right now, it's 50-50 about whether I will call it quits. I have a lawyer. I have papers written up and ready to be delivered if she messes up even once with me. Update. Here's some more info on her affair partner. The guy is on his way out as a pro sports guy, as he's in his late 30s. He still competes and travels internationally with his country's Olympic team. He has a side gig where he uses his charm and his story about his accomplishments to woo beautiful, sophisticated, wealthy married women to get into the sack with him. As I am a cybersecurity guy with an additional talent for looking into anyone's life, as I see fit, I found out very quickly that he owns a sex site along with his brother. He clandestinely records women he conquers, whether in their own homes, hotel rooms, etc. His MO is that he wants to listen to music from his smartphone when in actuality, he's using it to record videos. Update number 2. There are some more things I need to clarify. While I don't want to do the homework for those of you who say COVID doesn't last for 14 months or the vaccine doesn't cure COVID, you're right on both accounts to a point. There exists a group of people, roughly 20% of those who contract COVID-19 and are symptomatic, who experience one or more moderate to severe symptoms beyond 60 to 90 days. Many of us who contracted the virus early in mid-2020 seem to experience the long haul or symptoms that last well over a year. Look it up. As for the vaccine curing me, you're right, it didn't. Also, I see that some of you are calling me a simp for staying with her. I am a Sigma male. I am confident, charming, good-looking when not sick, intelligent, and exude self-confidence. I suppose it's a difficult thing for those who don't suffer long-term ailment, especially an ailment that completely takes away one's libido for over a year, to process that I had no desire and I was impotent due to COVID and occasionally due to my immune system prior to COVID-19, which affected our relationship for certain. That does not make me a simp. I have seen what women will do when they are infatuated and have the opportunity to cheat. They will do just that, and my wife was no exception. Of course I told her no. Of course I told her what kind of a person she was, shallow, narcissistic, etc., for what she was determined to do. She initially denied anything was going on, but I knew better and called her out. But my body and spirit were weak. I was like, fine, you want to do this and potentially wreck us? At least let me know where you are at all times, because you don't know this man. Yes, I know he is famous in his country and he has an image to protect, but please don't be intimate with him. If you decide to go that route, wear protection for yourself. I don't plan on having any intimate relations with you should you go that route, just so you know. Of course she agreed to all terms and broke every rule because she was being a typical defiant female cheater, and I was an impediment to her desire to have the affair. Also, I have divorce papers ready for my lawyer to pull the trigger, but there are some issues. My state is no fault, so her infidelity and my evidence concerning it means nothing. She doesn't work. I have always made excellent money so that she could be the artist and socialite she wanted to be. She's highly educated, very intelligent, and very talented artistically, and she spends most of her time volunteering for many worthy causes for others less fortunate. But what that means for me is that should I divorce her, I'd likely have to pay alimony in an amount equivalent to her lifestyle. Our current financial difficulties stem only from identity theft because as a cybersecurity guy, I pissed off a few hackers who were well-funded and represented other countries. I still make good money. We are crawling out of the hole, but I'll be damned if I divorce her right now as she'll be the one who benefits, and I'll still be okay and have a decent living wage. But paying her alimony after she screwed me over this hard, all because the state doesn't care about infidelity. This is reason number 2 why I haven't pulled the trigger. Wow, Opie, I don't even know where to start. There's so much to unpack here. From my understanding, the reasons you are planning on staying with her are because you believe this was a slight hiccup she had because for the first time in her life, she got the validation she needed from a guy who was perfect in her eyes. The second reason you stated is that you can't afford a divorce right now due to the hacker situation. Here's what I think you need to do. If you can't divorce her right now, then your next option should be to at least separate from her so that you can have some space to clear your head. It would be nice to that she just had an itch that needed to be scratched and that it won't happen again, but the likelihood that another man could get into her head and into her pants by just paying attention to her and complimenting her on her looks seems way too prevalent. And what if he comes back to town? You aren't entirely sure what she told him about herself, and he may have the resources to find her. Unless she has learned the hard lesson that she got played, she and you are in for more heartache. And if she is okay with being humped by a stud because she is getting her jollies out of it, she will do it again. Only if she is disgusted by being used and knowing she was a throwaway will there be any chance on her end of it never happening again. But you won't know that until a similar situation arises, and she either shuts it down or falls for it again. Do you really want to take that risk, Opie? I also recommend that you get into counseling so you can learn more on how to deal with this situation. Good luck. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take my wife and I had been married for 6 years when everything went down the drain. I have my own business and I hired a marketing firm to help me. I scheduled a meeting and I didn't know who was going to be showing up for it. I was sitting in my office and one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen walked in. I knew right away that I needed to date her. I asked her out, but she told me that her company had a strict policy about dating clients. I asked her out a second time I saw her too. I figured if she said no again, I would leave it alone. She did, so I was disappointed. A few days later, I got an email from the firm telling me that my account was being transferred to another representative at the agency. I felt horrible. I thought that I did something to offend the other rep, but shortly after I got a call from her. She told me that she had been really interested in going out with me, so she swapped accounts with a coworker. We went out to dinner, and a year and a half later, she was my wife. I genuinely thought I was the luckiest man on the planet. She was smart, funny, and so beautiful. She was everything a man could want and wife and more. Early on in the relationship, we discussed our past relationships. I told her all about the women that I dated in the past, even some of the casual hookups. I had to be as transparent as possible. She told me that she had one long-term boyfriend and a couple of situationships aside from that. But she didn't tell me that one of those situationships was a friends with benefits situation with one of her coworkers. Had she told me that I would have been a little less receptive to it. Looking back, it definitely seems like she was withholding a lot of information about it from me. I only found out about him when I found out she was cheating on me with him. Everything was normal for the first few years of our relationship. I trusted her with my life, and the idea of her cheating on me never crossed my mind. Both of us worked full-time, and with my business, I was putting in about 80 hours a week. I wish that I had more time to spend with her instead of working, but things with the business were rocky and I needed to tend to them. There were a lot of nights when I was coming home late in the evening. By the time I got back, my wife would already be asleep in bed. I was gone so much that it was difficult for me to notice the changes happening with her. After several months of working myself to the bone, things finally started calming down with my business, and I was able to take on a more normal schedule. I got my hours down to about 40 to 50 a week, and I was finally able to spend more time with my wife. Unfortunately, I hadn't realized that she was taking on extra projects at work. In my newfound spare time, I wanted to go on dates with her and surprise her with things, but she told me that she couldn't because she had meetings and things to attend in the evening. One day, she didn't tell me in the morning that she had anything scheduled later that evening, so I took it upon myself to schedule a surprise date for us. I figured I would have everything ready to go when she got in, so all she would have to do was change her clothes and we would head off to a nice restaurant in town. I texted her about halfway through the day and gave her a little hint about what I had planned. She replied about an hour later telling me that she thought it was a sweet gesture, but she had a surprise meeting that she was going to be in during the dinner reservation. It did strike me as a little strange that she had a surprise meeting. Her business was pretty well managed and they didn't tend to have a lot of surprises come up. I canceled the reservation and told her that we would do it another time. She got home around 7 o'clock p.m. and went right to the shower. We both worked in physical offices outside of the house, but we had a spare bedroom that we converted into an office space so we could work from home. The following morning, my wife had a dentist checkup around 10 o'clock, so she spent the first 2 hours of work in the office. When she left for the dentist, she didn't turn her computer off. I hadn't even noticed until I heard chiming coming from her desktop. It didn't bother me at first, but it started to draw my attention away from my work, so I decided to turn off her computer. I saw the messages popping up on the corner of the screen from a Slack channel. There were also messages from a coworker whom I'll call Terry about last night. I assumed it was the meeting that they were talking about right away, but a few messages and I realized he was talking about something else. It seemed like my wife lied to me about the meeting and was really spending time with Terry. That immediately caught my attention, and I looked through their messages in the Slack channel to see what was going on. It was pretty clear that they were having an affair and they were using the meetings as an excuse to be together. They were coworkers, so a lot of their messages were about work, but there was a switch in the messages where everything became very suggestive. They weren't being overtly sexual, but they were sending a lot of winky emojis and things like that. I looked Terry up online and I found him pretty easily. He was giving the facade of being a perfect American family man. He had a wife and 2 kids, a great job, and a beautiful home. On top of that, he was cheating on his family with my wife. I did as much digging on the Slack channel as I could, then I checked her email. There I saw exchanges that were a lot more graphic with pictures and videos of the two of them together. I was completely shocked by what I saw, even more so when I realized that my wife was the one who initiated everything. She sent him an email where she suggested that they get together again. She heard him talking to another coworker about an argument he was having with his wife, and she jumped on the opportunity to turn his head. She told him that she was feeling neglected in her relationship and she needed to have that physical connection with someone. He was all for it. Through the beginning exchanges, I learned all about their past and how they had an FB situation going on before my wife met me. I compared the timeline that I put together from their messages to Terry's relationship with his wife and figured out that he was cheating on his wife with mine the entire time they'd been together. I felt sick to my stomach. I thought I knew my wife, but it was clear that I didn't. I was disgusted knowing that she would sleep with a married man to begin with, then cheat on me with him again years later. There was no way that I was going to be able to stay with her after what I found. I was going to divorce her and I was going to make her regret every decision that she made, but before doing that, I wanted to get back at her. Her office was having an annual party to celebrate the company's anniversary in a few weeks. It was something they did every year, and spouses were invited to attend. They had a small award ceremony to offer a meaningless trophy and a small bonus to certain employees who had gone above and beyond. I knew that my wife was going to be getting one of those. She had been instrumental in landing a major client for the company, and she was going to be rewarded for that. However, I knew that she was sleeping with another employee in the office after hours, so I didn't think they would want to reward her for that. I played everything cool and pretended like I didn't know it was happening while we waited for the party. She tried to tell me that I didn't need to go when it got closer to the time, but I insisted on going to support her. I think it was clear that she didn't want me to be around Terry. The day finally came and I was ready for what I was going to do. I knew a lot of her coworkers and I mingled with them during the first part of the party. When the awards part came, I stood there and clapped just as everyone else did. My wife stood up and thanked their boss for giving her the award that he did. Once that was all over, I motioned to give a toast to everyone. Everybody knew that my wife won an award, so they probably thought I was going to give some mushy speech about how proud I was of her. Instead, I congratulated my wife on the award and told her that it would probably be the last one she got from the company. Then I added the affair she was having with Terry and told everybody in the room that I had evidence and pictures of her in the office with him. There was a ruckus around me as I elaborated on what happened. Terry's wife was practically begging him to tell her that it wasn't true. He was just as shocked as my wife was, I told her. The security guards at the office actually ended up escorting me out of the building. My wife wasn't far behind me because she stormed out to confront me about what I did. She told me that I humiliated her in front of everyone she worked with and that she was done with me because of it. I just laughed at her and told her that I had pretty much just ended things with her, so it didn't matter if she was done with me. Terry and his wife ran out after, and his wife came to me and asked me to clarify what I was talking about. I told her everything I knew, and she slapped Terry on the face and went off. After that, I knew that rumor about their affair was going to spread to the office like wildfire. With so many people talking, they would have to go to HR about it and have some kind of conversation. On top of that, I emailed her boss all of the evidence that I had. During the divorce hearings, I found out that my wife lost her job because I told her boss about the affair. I only found out about that because she was trying to get alimony from me because of it. My divorce attorney made sure that didn't happen though. I ended up keeping everything in the end, and I sold the house to move into a smaller place since it was just me. I've just been focusing on my business and trying to make sure that it is thriving before doing anything else. I've been a little hesitant to try getting back out there with dating again because I feel completely betrayed by what my wife did. Though I'm hoping sometime in the future I'll be ready for it. Opie, if she was feeling neglected, she should have gone to you and voiced that and figured out a way to work through it. It seems like you were very excited to be over that hump in your business to spend time with her. It's clear that you loved her and you would have done what you had to make her happy. It definitely seems like that was just an excuse to be with Terry. It's good that you called them both out for what they did, especially considering that Terry was cheating on his wife when they were initially together before you met your wife. He seems like a pretty sleazy guy, and it's good that they're not together. Now, let's get into our next story for today. I, 26 male, met my girlfriend, 24 female, through a dating app 3 years ago. We were only supposed to meet up as a quick hookup, but we found that we were very compatible with each other. We started casually seeing each other, and over time the relationship changed. We started getting to know more about each other, and we ended up becoming official. When we started dating, we went out every weekend. We had a ton of friends, and we would go out drinking with them, and we were involved in a ton of drama. It was just normal fun stuff. About a year ago, I was going through some things with my mental health. As a result, I have a hard time being around a lot of people. I went from being the extroverted life of the party to being extremely reserved and anxious. I never wanted to impose any of my mental health issues on my girlfriend. I didn't think it was fair to her, so if she still wanted to go out with her friends and have a good time, I encouraged her to do it. I was fine staying back and hearing all about it when she returned. After a few months, my girlfriend started to behave differently toward me. I was already having a lot of issues, but I started to feel like I was a burden on her. I knew that she wanted somebody who could go on adventures and do exciting things, but that wasn't something that I had in me at the time. I was already feeling very vulnerable about everything, so the way she was behaving toward me made it all the worse. She was very cold and distant, and whenever I would bring up something, it seemed like she was completely disinterested in it. I would start talking about work or how a counseling session went, and she would pull up her phone and start scrolling on social media. It made me feel like I was invisible. Around that time, she started going out more often. Before I was going through what I was going through, we went out every weekend. Afterwards, she would stay home with me on Friday nights and go out on the occasional Saturday. Suddenly, she started disregarding me entirely and going out on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I tried to talk to her about it, but she reframed the entire situation to make it seem like I was the bad guy for wanting to spend time with her. The sad thing is, at the time, I thought that was the case. I genuinely believed that I was being way too clingy and I was only damaging the relationship. So I shut my mouth after that. I never would have assumed that she would cheat on me, though. I thought we loved each other, and I understood that she wasn't ready to give up a big part of her youth for me. When my girlfriend goes out to the club, she gets all dressed up for it. She wears a nice outfit and a full face of makeup and steals the show wherever she goes. One important thing to note is that my girlfriend is very diligent with her skincare, and wearing makeup any longer than she needs to is an absolute no-go. There have been times when we have been nearly blackout drunk, and she has made sure to wash her face before going to sleep. One weekend, one of my good friends was throwing a bachelor party. It was just going to be a bunch of us renting a cabin and spending some time hunting and fishing. It had been quite some time since I'd seen all of my friends together, so I decided to go. While I was away, my girlfriend did what she did every weekend. She and her friends got together and they went out. I didn't talk to her much over the weekend aside from checking in now and then telling her that I missed her. When I got home the following Sunday, I was worn out from the trip. I was around a lot of people and I was exhausted. I went right to the bed and plopped down to try and get some rest. I noticed that on her pillow there were a lot of makeup stains. First of all, she wouldn't sleep in makeup normally. Second of all, she had an expensive silk pillowcase that she was very careful with. I couldn't think of the reason why there would be makeup stains on it. The closer I looked at it, I could see that it looked like there was smudged lip gloss and things like that. The more I looked at it, I was able to paint a picture in my head about what happened. It raised some flags for me, thinking that it might have been something sex-related. Without getting into too much detail, I knew how she was in the bedroom, so it wasn't completely unfounded to think that was why there were makeup stains on the pillow. I didn't even want to think about her cheating on me. Unfortunately, I couldn't think of a better reason for the stains. However, it was not something that I could confront her about. I just thought that I needed to keep an eye on things to see if I caught any more signs. Her behavior continued, and suddenly my eyes were completely open to why she might have been as distant as she was. I knew that was a telltale sign of somebody having an affair, and I had been too blind and distracted to notice it. I started looking through her Instagram accounts, and I noticed that she was following a lot of people that I didn't know. Most of them were guys too. I clicked on some of their profiles and saw that they were the types of guys that my girlfriend would normally go for. They went out often, and a couple of them even went to the club that my girlfriend frequented and had pictures tagged there. It was entirely possible that my girlfriend ran into some of these guys at the club and exchanged information. At the first chance that I had, I took a quick peek at her phone to see if I could confirm my suspicions. Unfortunately, I did. There was ample evidence that she had been hooking up with several different guys that she met at nightclubs. I saw that one of them invited him to our apartment when I was going away for the bachelor party. She told him that they would have the entire place to themselves, and they went into explicit details about all the things they were going to do. They even exchanged pictures. In some of the messages with the different guys, I saw her telling them that she had a boyfriend. She told some of them after she slept with them. One of them was angry that she lied to him. However, most of the other guys didn't seem to care. One of them asked about why she was cheating, and she told him that she didn't think we were compatible anymore, but she was too afraid to break up with me because I had issues. I just found out she cheated on me, so that was bad enough, but hearing her reasoning behind it stung. I knew that what I was going through wasn't easy for her, but for her to use it as an excuse to cheat on me was cruel. One of our friends was having a birthday party at a local karaoke room, and I thought that a microphone and a spotlight would be the perfect time to tell everybody about my girlfriend. I RSVP'd, which I'm sure surprised a lot of people in her friend group. The day of the party finally came, and I signed up to perform a song toward the beginning of the party. When I got up there, instead of singing along to my song, I grabbed the mic and broke up with my girlfriend. She was shocked, but I think she was offended more than anything. She laughed at me and told me to get off the stage. I explained to everybody else in the room what I discovered and how she was only staying with me because of my issues. I could see the demeanor of a lot of the people in the room shifting when I said that. I think because of what I was going through, they had a lot of sympathy for me. I wasn't looking for that, but if it made them look at her like some big villain, then it was fine. My girlfriend ran up on the stage and started causing a scene in front of everybody, and eventually one of our friends got in the middle of us and took the mic. They brought me off the stage and took me off to the side to talk. My girlfriend came in and interrupted us. She was embarrassed about everything that I had just done. She said that everybody in the room was looking at her like she was a monster and that I had no right to go through her belongings. I just told her that she had been lying to me and cheating on me, and I didn't care. She explained that she was cheating on me because I wasn't the person she agreed to be with. I changed so much, and she didn't want to be with me in the state that I was in. She said that she was nervous about breaking up with me because I seemed to be so fragile, so instead she decided to cheat on me. The thing is, I can understand where she was coming from a little bit. However, she was so careless with her affair that it would have been impossible for me to ignore it forever. She didn't think through what she was doing. She was trying to frame it like she cheated on me to protect me, but I don't think that was the case. I told her that I would be moving out of the apartment, and I didn't give her any chance to try and talk to me about that. I got my stuff out of there the next day and stayed with a friend of mine until I found another place to live. That friend told me that pretty much everybody had been avoiding her because of what she did. They all thought she was awful and manipulative. People were calling her a narcissist, and I think it opened the floodgates for everybody who didn't like her to voice their own opinions about her. That was several years ago. I'm much happier now, and I'm glad that ended. If it hadn't, I thought I was going to marry her, and the entire situation would have been so much worse. I'm with a fantastic girl now, and I'm able to trust her. It took some time to get there, but I found the right person now. Opie, first of all, I really hope you are doing better now with your relationships alongside your mental health. I'm not sure exactly what you were going through, but it seemed to have taken quite a toll on your social life and relationship with your girlfriend. It's honestly disgraceful that she would try and pretend like cheating on you with the only option that she had. It definitely was not. Like you said, she was not even doing anything to hide her affairs, so you were bound to find out anyway. I guarantee you she didn't think about how you would react if you found out she was cheating on you. She didn't care about your mental health. She was just selfish. It's good that your friends have all come to realize who she really is. She showed her true colors when she cheated and then made up the excuses that she did. I don't think this post described her well enough to label her as a narcissist, but if all of her friends are calling her that, it's good that you got away. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. I've been a cosplayer since I was 14. My wife and I dated for years before we got married and stayed together for 10. At the time of this story, I was 31 and she was 33. Even though she was never as passionate about cosplaying as me, she would go with me. I could tell she was losing enthusiasm for it even more, but she still came with me, dressed as her favorite Star Wars character. While I was geeking out with my friends, she must have decided she was too mature for all this and left. I noticed she was gone, but I trusted her, assuming she went to the bathroom. She came back hours later. By this time, I had been casually looking for her for 2 hours. Maybe I trusted her too much, or maybe I was having too much fun. When she showed up, she was really happy but squirmish. She was holding her phone in her hand and said she just went for a walk for a while and found a small-time bookshop that she couldn't resist. She was reading all that time before coming back to me. I asked if she bought a book and she said no, looking pretty stupid. She started texting a little more often than normal, but she said it was her older sister catching up with her. She was pretty bubbly and texting off and on. It didn't seem like anything was wrong, but she also didn't seem interested in me or what we were doing. She took selfies with me and did what I wanted, but her heart wasn't in it. After dinner, we went to see a movie. We sat beside each other for the first 30 minutes, then she had to go to the bathroom. She made sure to mention her stomach hurt, so I didn't expect her to come back very fast. Well, at nearly the end of the movie, I wandered out and yelled into the women's bathroom. No one responded to me. I started calling her over and over again while I went back to the hotel and found that she wasn't there either. I went to the convention, feeling exhausted and wondering what she was doing. There, she ran into me. She said I wasn't at the hotel. Before I even tried to respond to that, I noticed she wasn't wearing lipstick, contrary to how I saw her at the movies. It looked like she washed it off because there was nothing left. I smelled her slightly damp hair and it smelled like lemons, not like the shampoo in our hotel or the one we brought. I added all the odd disappearances, odd texting, odd smells, odd appearance, odd jiddiness, and wondered if she was cheating on me. Of course, I was going to have to check her phone and confront her about it, but before I said anything, her phone started ringing. She was already holding it in her hand, so in the moment she was registering who it was, I grabbed it from her. I answered the call and asked who it was. My male voice must have scared him off because he hung up. I tried calling back and got the voicemail of a deep-voiced professional-sounding AP. I scrolled through their messages and found the arrangements they made for my wife to come over. They also talked about his stock marketing skills, and in the most recent message, AP confesses how quickly he's falling for her and how magical her body is. She was holding her face, ordering me to give her back her phone. Out of all the things she should have been saying, it was that. I yelled, "You cheated on me," loud enough for the costumed people around us to hear. They were already invested, having seen a circle around the convention a few times. They started booing her as I held up her phone with messages on the screen. I turned to walk out, but she followed me. Back at the hotel, she admitted she was just bored and felt like she was too mature to keep cosplaying every year. She quickly added that she realized now it was a huge mistake and she loved me for who I was. I looked her straight in the eyes and said she made me sick. As I packed, I told her I'd have to be a moron to stay married to her now, and she should have just talked out the differences with me before she spread her legs for a more interesting or more mature man. Now it's much too late to apologize, and I don't care about her at all. She's worth nothing or negative value, if that's possible. She's like a black hole. Her level of putridness would affect anyone who gets close enough to her. I told her I would never care about what happened to her and shoved my bags in the car. I left her there in a different state, but she didn't have any living relatives to come to her rescue. She didn't even have very close friends, so she stayed where I left her. She tried to go to AP, and he entertained her for a while, making her feel like everything was going to be okay. She was needy, barely had any money, and depended on him to take care of her all of a sudden. It was like adopting a child with no intentions of improving her situation beyond that. Funny thing is she once accused me of being like a child, but I worked full-time. After he kicked her out, she started calling me every day to cry and leave me long, pitiful voicemails. When she finally came back to the state we were living in, she didn't attend any of our court hearings, and I sold anything she had in our home after 10 years of marriage. Her voicemails were pathetic, and she wouldn't stop because I was the only person she knew so well. She was in a world of strangers now. It's up to her to find what she needs. I used to be her provider and caregiver, like a good husband, but it wasn't good enough. Opie, I am so sorry your wife went with you to do something you loved, only to take advantage of your busy state and sneak off to cheat on you. She did not deserve to have a husband, let alone one as fun and respectable as you. From what you said, I can tell you valued the relationship you had and took pride in knowing how to communicate with your spouse. I'm sorry she didn't do the same for you and thought that she could find better with someone different. Different or new does not mean better, and in that moment of temptation, cheating women proved themselves idiots for failing to see the bigger picture. I wish you all the best going forward. Now, let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I were married for 7 years and had been attending the same church for that long. Everyone had gotten to know us well, so the church agreed to let my wife start counseling members for free. She'd had a rough childhood, but managed to find faith and steer clear of drugs. She wanted to help others that couldn't afford counseling. Her intentions were so pure and good that the church, nor I, wouldn't have suspected her to do what she did. She operated as an unofficial counselor for years and came to know everyone in town through mutual friends. She never gossiped about people and became well respected for helping others, just what she wanted to do. This all changed when she met a sad, lonely man who was new to the church and coping with his wife being in a coma. She was in a car accident where he was driving, but it wasn't really his fault. He craved the company of a woman because she'd been in a coma for 7 months. She would counsel him and others in an office in the church where they had all the time and privacy they needed. Given the situation, 7 months doesn't seem long enough for him to be willing to cheat on his wife, but it was. At the same time, 7 years of marriage seems to be worth more than 5 counseling sessions with an unfortunate man, but it wasn't. When we both got home on one of the worst days ever, she said she'd suddenly felt nauseous on the drive. She blamed something she ate and locked herself in the bathroom. I called through the door to ask if she needed anything, but she said no. She sounded so upset, more than just sick. I heard her struggling, but she still didn't come out. When she finally did, she took one look at me, and her lips started trembling. Her eyes poured tears, and when I rushed to her side, she pushed me away, claiming she didn't deserve it. She bursted out with, "I cheated on you." It felt like she shot me in the heart. I grabbed my chest and dropped onto the bed. She said she regretted it more than anything. She said it was the biggest mistake and stupidest thing she could have done. She said that AP's wife was in a coma and admitted he longed for a woman. I gasped. She cheated with a married man. I called her despicable and said she was supposed to be mine. She started crying so hard, she could barely talk. She said she would never counsel anyone again, but she needed me to forgive her. She was on her knees, sobbing onto my lap. When I gathered the strength and willpower to stand up for myself, I pushed her away. I said she was right. She didn't deserve my comfort or love. I wouldn't trust her to be around anyone without me. I told her having a relationship would be impossible now. I would be stupid to think there wasn't a better woman out there for me. I made her pack her stuff and leave, on the threat I'd tell the church everything. She said she wouldn't survive the embarrassment from that and would certainly need the church's support if I was to leave her. I asked if she deserved the church's support, and she said yes. This sounded to me like she wasn't learning her lesson, so after she finally left the house with a bunch of stuff, I called the church pastor. I told him what happened and described AP's situation for him to figure out who it was. She was staying with family and didn't realize I told the church until she walked in on Sunday morning, only to receive demeaned stares. No one spoke to her, and she was too afraid to speak to anyone else. Shortly after that, AP's wife woke up from her coma. It was really heartbreaking. Everyone knew AP cheated on her, so even if he wasn't the one to tell her, someone did. AP hated my wife for allowing him to do it, instead of being the good, honest counselor he needed her to be. The good, honest wife I expected her to be. I still blamed him a little bit, but he was right. He was the one feeling weak, but my wife wasn't strong enough to assure him that things were going to work out somehow. Not without breaking her vows to me and encouraging him to break his vows to his wife. It's still a little unbelievable to me. AP was still divorced. It's not something to be forgiven, unless they want to remain unhappy, uncertain, and face higher chances of breaking up in the future. OP, your wife should have known better and held up to her goal of wanting to help people instead of sabotaging so many relationships and much trust. When her loyalty to you and respect for what others were going through mattered the most, she failed. Sadly, people fail all the time, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't face the consequences. Her life and the lives of 3 others drastically changed. I am glad you chose not to forgive her and that she couldn't bring herself to lie or pretend she didn't do anything wrong. At least the truth found its way out of her, and you told the church what happened. AP's wife deserved to know, too, so that the healing process can begin and neither of you will be hurt by those people again. I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If this is a story you would like to share with me about your situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. I, 37, took my wife, 33, on an 11th year anniversary cruise. We worked jobs that we thought were bearable, but not exactly thrilling, so this cruise was something we both really looked forward to. I wanted us to meet other people and socialize, because why not? I wasn't sure we'd be lucky enough to meet long-term friends, but at least people to chat with. Wouldn't you know it, on the first night we met a really nice couple. The wife's name was Susie. After talking and gabbing away for a while by the bar, the 4 of us agreed to meet the next day as well. By the pool, the husband admits he's looking for a couple to swing with. Susie is shocked he actually brought it up and clearly doesn't agree with it. She looks sad that he wants to do such a thing. I agree with her and tell him we aren't looking to compromise our relationship. He plays it off, saying it's not like that, but I disagreed. Susie was relieved, but my wife actually looked disappointed. I made a mental note to quiz her about it sometime. Susie and her husband started talking about all the adventures they went on together. My wife looked envious and continued staring at Susie's husband. I didn't know at the time, but she got his number. We both dressed up nice, and she came with me to the casino. She was entertained for a while, but eventually she wandered off while I played poker. She told me she'd be right back, but she didn't come back even in an hour. I left the table and started looking for her and calling her over and over. Looking for her felt like a helpless waste of time because the boat was huge. What are the chances I'd run into Susie, who was also looking for her own spouse? When we saw each other, we panicked. I suggested we both go check our staterooms and meet back here with whatever we found. She agreed, and I raced back to mine, but no one was there. When I came out, I was feeling nauseous and picturing Susie walking in on them. 2 security guards passed by me just then, looking like they were on a mission. For some reason, I got hunched to follow them. They passed by where I told Susie to meet, so I waved her over. As we followed them, she said she didn't find anything, and he still wasn't answering his phone. I told her I thought these guys might be onto something. They led us straight to the comedy club, which was currently empty, but the doors were unlocked for a show in 3 hours. They called out, "Excuse me," and I jumped. Then I noticed two people's heads behind a bar. They were quietly swearing, and I heard my wife apologize and ask security to hold on a moment. I covered my mouth to try to hold my face together. I couldn't believe this was happening. Susie was also in disbelief. As soon as they stepped out, I could only ask my wife what the hell was happening. Susie screamed. Security just noticed we were behind them and asked if we were a couple. We clarified that we were their spouses and they were cheating, so security left their consequences up to us. They stepped aside to let us hash it out with them, but there wasn't much to say. I just stared at my wife and shook my head. I kept asking why she did this, but she just chalked it up to temptation she couldn't refuse. It hurt. I told her she wasted 11 years of our lives, but she said she didn't see it as a waste. I told her she was downplaying what she did. Our relationship was something I treasured and honored, but now it was a waste because it was over. I would have to start with someone new, someone I'd have to learn how to trust after she broke me. She started crying, but her wailing of regret didn't start until I told security that I voted for option C, which was to have her forced off the cruise ship at whatever port was next. It would be up to her to find a way home, and without me, she was going to be scared and uncomfortable. Susie bravely agreed with me, signing up her cheating spouse for the same fate. They were both yelling in protest as they were led away to their individual holding cells. Of course, since we were their spouses, we could get off at the next port with them, but we chose not to. We weren't lonely, though. Before they were kicked off, we gave them their luggage and passports. They were absolutely miserable. AP was just mad and walked off without so much as a goodbye to his betrayed wife and gave no indication that he intended to stay with my wife, either. My wife was on her knees, holding onto my legs. She hated traveling, which is why we weren't on a road trip. Now she had to figure out how to get back, which could include a plane flight, her worst phobia. She got home a month after me. She had sunburn and said she had to do questionable things to get back. Now she owes her uncle $400 as well. I said she was welcome to get her pile of belongings out of my yard. I pulled off a tarp, covering all her things that I pulled out of the house. I told her she was lucky I didn't sell it all. She couldn't believe I still went through with the divorce, so I told her this was her reality check. She was not expecting to lose me on her 11th wedding anniversary, but maybe that's because she didn't think through what might happen and what she might deserve. Opie, I am so sorry your wife left you for another man on your anniversary cruise. She should have been thankful and appreciative toward you for being a faithful man and partner to her all those years. Instead, she completely ruins the very thing you two were celebrating. She had to be very inconsiderate and selfish. She must have been willing to lie to you after this, to keep what she'd done a secret. She didn't plan on losing you. She planned on secretly betraying you, and she almost got away with it. Thank goodness for security and cameras. I'm proud of you for choosing to have her kicked off the boat. There's no way you deserve to have to share a room with her on your anniversary after she cheated. She deserved to face the struggle and insecurity, and you deserved a better spouse. Anyways, let's now get into our second story for today. My wife went out with her 3 best friends for her 25th birthday. We were married for 2 years, together for 4. Everything about our relationship was amazing. Our chemistry and care for each other seemed like it would last forever. I trusted her to go to the concert without me because it was her friend's treat, and I didn't want to impose. It was a heavy metal band, and they did not anticipate the shocking event that would occur. As soon as the music began and the group was about to come out, the crowd made a mad stampede for the stage. Rows 1 to 5 were jumped over, and people were climbed over. My wife was separated from her friends involuntarily, like being caught in a wave. When it got to where there couldn't fit any more people, my wife was at risk of being seriously injured. One strong security guy just happened to be right beside her, noticed her struggle, and succeeded in pulling her over the rib-high fence. They both continued helping people escape the pressure until 10 entire minutes after that, when the fence fell. There were severe injuries, so the concert was canceled. I saw a broadcast about it on the news and tried calling my wife over and over, but she wouldn't answer. I was starting to assume the worst and called one of her friends. This girl was upset, but not hurt, and said they got separated. She hadn't seen her, which I didn't take for a good sign. By the time the concert would have normally been over, my wife walked in the door. She was happy and calm. Sensing this unexpected demeanor, I let her emotion take the lead in our conversation. She started by greeting me happily. She said she had a great time and she appreciates me for trusting her to go out with her friends. I felt the hair stand up on my neck. She was thanking me for trusting her, but she was pretending the concert happened and she loved it. I was speechless. I said she was welcome, and she only ever proved to me that she deserved my trust and love. She just smiled faintly and yawned. I was super uncertain about how to behave in front of her. I was glad she was alive, but now I suspected her of cheating on me and thinking she could get away with it. After she went to bed, I tried to check her phone, but it was locked down and sealed tight. No message previews or anything. I decided I needed to confront her, so I woke her up, hoping her grudginess and panic would help me catch her in her lies. I told her I knew what happened and that there was no concert because of the overly aggressive crowd. I followed that up by quickly demanding she tell me where she was all that time I tried calling her. She said, a lot, and at first, just admitted a man helped her to safety. She elaborated on how much he saved her life, and then said they just hung out afterwards. I told her I wasn't an idiot and asked if he expected something extra special in exchange for saving her life. I saw her reels turning, and after a moment, she worked up some fake tears and said he took advantage of her. I immediately said if that was true, she needed to give me her unlocked phone so I could search it and then call the police on AP. She turned red and said no. She said I didn't need to go that far. I asked in pretense shock why I shouldn't, if AP just did what she said. She reluctantly gave me her phone unlocked. I was staring at her so she didn't try to look at her newest message. I could tell she was holding her breath as I read. It was from someone programmed as Maddie, but based on the context, I could tell for sure that Maddie was a man, and my wife was a willing participant in what they did just a few hours earlier. I showed it to her and asked what excuse she had for it. She was stumped. She started real crying, and it was quite a difference. She changed tactics and started begging me to forgive her. I just laughed, and I verbally expressed my anger and disappointment. I said I wished I never met her, and she was a waste of time and space. I informed her that she didn't need to spread her legs just because he saved her. It was just luck, and a genuine thank you. Maybe a gift card would have been fine, but now our relationship is over. She didn't have anything useful to say, and she wouldn't matter to me ever again, so I kicked her out around 2 a.m. She was cold, miserable, and desperate. Trying to avoid bringing her parents into it, she called AP. He did not want her to come back over, and to avoid the awkward reasoning of why, he hung up. I was laughing through the cracked window. She caved pretty quickly and called her parents. She didn't even have her own car, which meant AP gave her a ride home that night, and she counted on her father to come get her after I found out. He had to work at 5 a.m. and made her feel worse about not being able to patch things up with me for the night or ever. Little did he know she was about to become his dependent again for the next 2 years. I don't know what happened after that, but I was lucky to find a respectable woman that hasn't failed me yet. I'm thankful I didn't spend more time with my ex before this happened. OP. Your wife was supposed to have a fun night with her friends, but when that became interrupted, she decided to cheat on you. I am shocked that she couldn't have been more thoughtful about just how despicable this choice would be. That man saving her did not make you less deserving of a moral and honest wife, and that's what she failed to consider. She only thought about herself and believed you would never find out. She deserved to be cold, miserable, and desperate because she dishonored the man she committed herself to. Warmth, happiness, and security are for the loyal, trustworthy wives. I am so glad you saw the news report and paid attention to her behavior. You refused to forgive or keep her and acted as an example for us all to follow when or if we are faced with an unfaithful spouse. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.